Alastair Campbell is the original messenger who became as famous as the story he was trying to deliver. For more than a decade, he was Tony Blair's right-hand man, spinning the New Labour story with gusto and often telling journalists exactly what they should write. But as we discovered recently when he presented Citywire's annual New Model Advisor Awards, he remains a very lively political animal.
They've persuaded people that, one, the country is in an absolute state of chaos and mess and disaster and all the rest of it, and two, that it's all Gordon Brown's fault and it's all Labour's fault. Let's not forget, large part thanks to Gordon's management and to Tony's premiership, we had 10 years of pretty steady growth and rising prosperity and better public services and all the rest of it. And we had 10%. Wait a minute. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And
Alistair,
he's asked the question, I'll answer it. And what's more, sorry? What? And we had 10 very good years, and you lot enjoyed it as much as anybody else. Let's understand that. Let's also understand that when you talk about the public finances, that they like to run this line that, it's just like a household. You've got to sort of, your money coming in, you have money going out. The big difference with governments is that they can run deficits, and they can print money, and they can levy taxes. And the government is now saying they have to make all these choices. In my view, they don't.
You've been a frequent critic, especially back then, of the level of political coverage of many newspapers, if not most of them.
And broadcasters.
And broadcasters. Has it got any better? Is it getting worse?
Well, it's interesting because lots of reasons why I left when I did leave, but one of them was I'd sort of given up thinking that there was anything we could do to try and improve the way that the political debate took place and the way that it was covered. There's all sorts of things we did. I mean, every time you see David Cameron doing a monthly press conference, we started that as a way of trying to engage in a different way. Prime Minister going to select committees, doing longer and more extended and more detailed interviews with the Paxmans of this world. It was all about trying to engage, going out and doing public question and answer sessions. And everything we did really just became defined by the rest of the media as, well, it's more spin. And this idea that anything you say in politics is just spin, it kind of reduces it to the level of idiocy, really. But I think the big two changes, one, of course, obviously, is the advent of the World Wide Web, and that's totally changed the way that news is consumed. And the second thing is that 24-hour news has forced newspapers to rethink what they are. So they've inevitably become different sorts of things. They're much more about their line and their campaigning. So I think that was inevitable. And there's no point complaining about that. It's just the way that it is. But I think that you put the whole thing together, and what political debate as conducted through the media has become, it's just sort of a talking shop about the next sort of little thrill. There's very little focus on kind of, really big long-term questions and difficult policy debates and that sort of thing. So, I mean, there's some of it's okay, some of it's good, and there are still some very good journalists around, but I think the centre of gravity is in a very bad place.
What advice would you give to the bankers who've got this terrible image? We had Bob Diamond in front of the committee.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I have done events like this with bankers, and one point I always make to them is that if you are getting hit, if your reputation is in a bad place, then it's incumbent upon you to think about it and try to do something about it. And fun enough, although I don't think Bob Diamond, he didn't get a terribly good press the other day and probably didn't deserve one, but that being said, I think the general point that he was trying to make, I think if you like, he should have expressed it like this. It's basically to say, yes, we were part of the problem, but we're also part of the solution.
Can I throw some questions at readers that we put out on our website today? Did Gordon Brown save the world?
No, but I mean, I think Gordon Brown handled what was by any stretch of the imagination, a pretty cataclysmic crisis. I think he handled it incredibly well. And if you talk to a lot of people in different countries around the world, experts in economic management, they'll say that Gordon was a very significant player and he handled it well.
A reader called Donald Alexander said, how much information could you and Tony Blair absorb, and how could you know if some of this, quote, information was correct and the most relevant that you had to hand?
He was always very, very good at absorbing briefs. He was a very, still is, quick reader, can assimilate information very, very quickly. I think ultimately government and the process of government means that you have to you have to rely upon other people who are sifting information all the time. But ultimately, if it ever came to a big decision, whether it was economic or foreign policy or social and domestic policy, Tony was somebody who would want to read it in considerable depth himself.
George Woodhouse, Tony Blair's legacies of our shattering economic situation and the Iraq War, should he have stood up to both Gordon Brown and George Bush, and had he done so, would his reputation have come out better?
I don't accept the premise of the question, because if you talk about legacy, I mean, I've got a book out next week which is about 1997 to 99, covers Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement. That is a massive part of Tony Blair's legacy. Minimum wage, devolution to a Scottish Parliament and a Welsh Assembly, Sure Start, schools and hospital spending, gay rights. I mean, I think if somebody like George probably isn't a great, probably isn't a fan, and therefore he'll look for the things that he thinks can best paint a negative picture of Tony's legacy. But I think history will be a lot kinder than that.
Okay. Someone called D. Lang says, should Chancellors of the Exchequer have qualifications in economics?
That is tough. I mean, I think people understand that in a sense you have to make a government from, if you like, the political gene pool that you've got. And for example, at the moment Andrew Lansley is the Secretary of State for Health. If the logical extension of that question is that you should only have doctors and nurses in charge of health, you should only have teachers in charge of education. I just don't think government and politics can work like that. So short answer is no.
Okay. Final one, we can't let you go without talking about football. Donald Hunter says you're a Kilmarnock fan?
No, Kilmarnock's a Scottish team.
Yeah. Is this false information?
No, yeah, I'm a Burnley fan.
Right, we know that.
Yeah, but my Scottish team is Kilmarnock, yeah, okay. And that's because of my mother.
Exactly. And how are their prospects, both teams? Burnley back in the Premier League?
I think it's going to be tough. It's not easy without a manager. I've applied for the job and they're not taking me seriously. I'm deadly serious. I want to be the first football manager who knows absolutely nothing about football beyond what I see. No, I think they could. I think we could get up. I think we could. And Kilmarnock are actually having quite a good year by their standards. But Scottish football's not in a good state.